Hey guys, today we're going to install a transmission mount. For today's install, I am installing good old energy suspension. It's my preferred choice when it comes to polyurethane, though there are lots of other brands. As long as you're picking polyurethane, I don't really have any issues. This is just the brand that I've always been using all the years, and I've had very consistent performance and installation. So it's rain today and I'm in the driveway, but these videos don't stop, so we're gonna keep on going. Luckily, this is a very easy install and it's not raining that bad. And I'm gonna show you guys that just putting down cardboard and using hand tools, you can do this job. To remove everything, we used a 15mm wrench and socket, but when you're installing the new bolt, you'll have to switch over to 5/8. We're working on my 2005 Silverado, and luckily it's got enough ground clearance that I don't have to raise the vehicle. I can just work on it from underneath, which is going to make life easier when it comes to jacking up the transmission. You also want to make sure that you secure the wheels, put the parking brake on, and park it in gear, obviously. So for this particular vehicle, because it's a two-wheel drive, it has a very old school mount. You'll see this on a ton of GM vehicles, the rear-wheel drive ones, where we have two bolts. You can see here, one on this side, and then another one on, this side, and then one underneath. So you see that nut there on that stud? So 3 fasteners. And what we have to do is we have to loosen all, jack up the transmission. Looks like we have a lot of room here on the tail end, so we're going to jack it up from here and then replace this. If you have a 4-wheel drive, from what I've seen, the mount looks like it's still 2 fasteners and then 2 more fasteners underneath. So that will change. So this part will only work for the 2-wheel drive trucks, just so you guys know. So first we're going to crack the one in the Crossmember. Trying to show you what I did with one hand. So you need a deep socket and a breaker bar, and you will be able to crack it loose. Now what I did to crack it loose to make it easier, I used Seafoam's Deep Creep. I'm a big fan of it. It works really well, and I did that the night before. I also sprayed Deep Creep on top of here. I've seen people, they prop the transmission and then they'll remove the whole cross member. You can do that if you really want to get more room. If you use the Deep Creep, I was able to actually just get my... Oh, you guys are going to hate this video. I was able to get my combination wrench on there and crack it loose. I used the longest combination wrench I had. You can also double it up by going on the ends here if you guys are having an issue with it. But the real trick is no heat, just lots of penetrating lube, a night or two before, spray it on these threads, just spray it everywhere, and it'll be a lot easier to crack off. Now, I admit, it's a lot easier to crack off on my truck. You see, there's really no corrosion. I have this thing crowned every 2 years. I don't take it off-road. It's a street truck. It sees gravel roads every once in a while. I try to keep it as clean under here as possible, and it's paying off because there's very little corrosion, so I have less issues to deal with. The upper bolts, you're not going to be able to get an impact or anything in here unless you drop the cross member. The combination wrench, I'm just using a standard one. I'm pretty sure a gear wrench would fit in here just fine. Keep in mind, gear wrenches have a little bit thicker of a head. The material's a little bit thicker to accommodate the gear assembly, but I got time. I'm a patient guy, so we're just going to take this one out the slow way. Okay, we've jacked up the transmission and we have the mount out. A couple things. This is where you have to, if you're not comfortable with this kind of stuff, get a professional to do it. Keep your fingers away from the side and be very quick when you're getting that mount out. The crappy thing about this is there's that stud. So you have to get this thing kind of high up in the air and have your hands off to the side, because if the jack decides to go down, you don't want your fingers to get pinched. Another thing you want to consider is there are electrical connections on these transmissions. When you're jacking it up, make sure you're monitoring this and any hoses, anything connected to the transmission, that you're not overextending it. If you are running out of slack, undo these clips, get that slack in. You don't want to do a simple job like this, tear some wiring, and then wonder why your transmission is not shifting properly. Okay, let's compare. Now, the main reason I'm changing this out is because I want to get better performance from the vehicle. I want to put more torque down and transfer the power that the engine's making. Because on a design like this, you can see this is actually in good condition. It's actually was pretty solid in there. It's not degraded in any way, but look at the design. It's hollow. That other side looks solid in there. That's just from the that's just from the molding process. So there's just a little bit of material left over. You think it's solid, and it's actually not. They're designed to be hollow. This is the thing that manufacturers do to make your ride smoother. So for those of us that are looking for more performance and more durability of a product, you want to switch to something like this. It is completely solid. It's a harder material, but it has just enough give that's still comfortable on the street. Also, if you look at the way Energy Suspension does these products, there's still metal inside and it's like an interlocking design, while the GM one is this is just rubber. So if these go, there's nothing really helping hold that transmission to the frame, which I don't really like. So 2 reasons: better durability, I'm going to transfer more torque. I find a lot of people are so focused on horsepower, like I'm going to put a tuner in, I'm going to change out the cam, I'm going to do all this stuff to make power, and so many people are not utilizing what power they already have. When you're doing the installation, you want to make sure that you follow the instructions very carefully. They are provided. Also, note the orientation. Now, I have a little bit of a cheater here. I did have this on the passenger side, so I know that its orientation was like this. And when we look over on top, we can see that the mounting holes are offset. So you're going to want to replicate that with the Energy Suspension piece. Also, keep note of the height. You can see with this is actually what they call is preload plate, and it must be used. So a lot of people might think like, oh, it's just a spacer. You'll notice with the preload plate, it's the same height. This is what we want, because we want our whole drivetrain to have the exact same angles. And the way it's designed, this plate is necessary for operation for this guy to do its job. So make sure you read the instructions and use what it's telling you to use. So to verify, this is the bottom of the stud. Here is my little indicator that I use to make sure that this is the passenger side. And we can see that the holes go towards the front. So we are mimicking that. The Energy Suspension logo goes towards the rear preload plate. You guys will be tempted, because I was. Read the instructions. If you have these kind of bolts, it says to use this. Do not use the supplied washers, because we're all tempted like, oh, grade 8 fancy hardware, we're going to do this. No, don't do that. Inspect these bolts. Make sure that they're in good condition. You can reuse them. If they don't look like they're in good condition, like just severely corroded, you had to impact them out, you had a hard time taking them out, the threads don't look in good condition, go to the dealership, get new ones. We will, though, however, use this, because this is the new supplied one. The old mount had a stud in. The new one, it's threaded, which, if you ever had to change it out, would make it a lot easier, because we had to jack up the transmission so far to give us clearance to get this out. With the new mount, if you ever had to take it out again, it's a lot easier. You won't have to jack it up nearly as far. For this part, you guys want to make sure that you inspect the crossmember. Apparently, it is notorious for cracking, especially those of you that have a high horsepower application. You might want to reinforce this area. Also, you can see here on the new design, this is that interlock feature that I was talking to you guys about. So if for whatever reason the polyurethane completely gives out, we still have metal in here to help keep the transmission attached to the frame of the vehicle. Okay, we have our new mount in. I pretty much did in reverse. So what we did was, with the jack still underneath the transmission with it all the way up, we loosely put these bolts in, and then we lowered it. Luckily enough, underneath here, it's slotted as well. So there's room for adjustment. So we basically looked at the wear mark inside the crossmember and tried to line it up the exact same way it had from factory. Basically ended up being that this was pushed all the way forward, which makes sense because you want as much mating surface between the two materials as much as possible. If it was all the way back here, it doesn't look like it was installed that way based on what we were judging by the crossmember. There wouldn't be much touching the transmission. So pushing all the way back, the wear marks lined up into the crossmember, and then this has a lot of surface area to mate to. So all we have to do now is torque to specification underneath. It'd be pretty hard to do it here, so we just snug this up really hard, and we just have to go drive it now. We are now going on our first test drive. Now, the first thing you want to do is turn on the engine. Whenever you're doing drivetrain parts, I've learned from experience that sometimes, I noticed this more in my car, if you had a clearance issue, you might want to start, because you might get vibrations right away. You have to turn off the vehicle right away and check for clearance. Now, we started up the vehicle, no clearance issues. One thing I was concerned about when I first did my 350 and changed out the transmission mount, I got a lot of noise and vibration harshness inside the cabin. So when I fired up the truck, it didn't have that. You can't really tell that you changed it, which is nice. But what I'm doing is I'm driving around the block really slow. Looking at it and measuring it, it was the exact same height, but if you're dealing with drivetrain parts, you don't want to just go out and drive at regular speed. You want to drive really slow and make sure that if something's out of alignment, you're going to catch it quicker. You can do that by driving slow around the block. Everything seems fine, but it's just a quick tip because I've done in the past where I changed out my torque arm on my 4th gen Camaro, and it was fully adjustable, and it was in the wrong position. And as soon as I drove it out, we actually let the wheels spin securely in the air, and you would just hear like this binding sound because the pinion of the drive shaft, or the drive shaft angle, was incorrect. Couldn't get it right. I had to send it to a drivetrain shop. I needed someone with experience, and we did that like 12 years ago. So that's why right now I'm just driving around the neighborhood nice and slow, making sure everything feels right. And then we can go ahead and drive this thing in the city and then take it on a short highway run. So we're about 8 minutes into our test drive so far, and what I found interesting was I was expecting a more jerky ride. I thought I'd feel more feedback from the drivetrain, and the funny thing is I'm actually feeling less. So it seems that either the other mount was just on its way out. I'll show you guys quickly how to check that. If you want to check the transmission, you take like a long pry bar or a long piece of steel and you kind of jam it up in here, and you try to get some movement out of it. You don't want to see much deflection at all. Like if you're seeing a lot of movement, your transmission mount's probably done. In our case, it wasn't. I just wanted the upgrade, and it pretty much has the exact same movement, probably just a little bit less because it's brand new and fresh. These things will break in afterwards. Or it's just the nature of the beast, having a built-up transmission and everything. But now that we're sending more of the power to the back, more of that action's probably happening at the tires, because it seems to want to chirp them a bit more than it ever used to. So you definitely, in slicker conditions, you're going to want to be a lot easier on the throttle if you have a setup similar to mine, a rear-wheel drive setup with a V8. Other than that, though, I'm actually finding that the drivability of the truck is actually smoother. I'm not feeling it nearly as much as I thought I would. So what are my impressions after driving this for about 20 minutes? I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm mostly surprised about how much better the truck drove as far as noise and vibration. There isn't any additional, which is great to hear. So if you guys were concerned, I don't want to put a new mount on the transmission, I'm afraid that it's going to get really noisy inside or get more vibration. That is not the case for this particular application. Now, I do admit I did have that in my 350. I just had to drive it around a lot more and break it in. I believe after this breaks in a bit more, it's going to get even smoother. Now, I will note, under hard acceleration, because my built transmission, it does when it goes to the 1-2 shift is pretty aggressive on this truck. You definitely feel it a lot more. However, driving it nicely around the city, I don't really notice it. If anything, the truck is driving smoother. That's what I was really surprised about. What I think was the old mount, just because it's old, it's got over 200,000 kilometers on it. It was just degraded. And even though it looked okay, it just had a lot of slop. So by removing all the slop in the drivetrain back here, the truck just drives a lot better. And what I noticed is off the line and during a downshift and acceleration, the truck feels like it has more torque. Most likely because we're not absorbing the energy anymore. We're transferring it more to the wheels where it needs to be. And that's helping a lot just because of that little guy. So I highly recommend it because it was cheap for one. It's way less than $100 depending where you get it. And it was super easy to install. So there's really no reason for you guys not to upgrade to this part. If you like today's content, make sure to check out my channel and hit the subscribe button and make sure to hit that bell notification. What that does is it makes sure that you're always kept up to date with all the content that we're providing with you guys on YouTube. So the way that we have the channel set up is I have the uploads up top. That way at all times you can always see, if you just hop by the channel, what our latest upload is. Plus with the bell notification, you're going to get some sort of message from YouTube itself. We also have popular uploads, car videos, how-to videos, demonstration and informational videos, and a lot of cool other specific car videos like our builds playlist. I really like the builds playlist because it takes all the theories from our how-to section and it keeps applying it to different vehicles. Yeah.